What would you do if the people working for you treated poor people like trash, and you saw it all with your own eyes? If this story touches your heart, please share, and subscribe to Viral Tales. We want to hear from you too. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from, because we love hearing from our viewers around the world. Eleanor Hayes stood outside the tall glass building on Madison Avenue, looking at her reflection in the window. She barely recognized herself. The woman staring back at her wore old, torn clothes from a thrift shop. Her gray hair was messy and uncombed. Her shoes had holes in them. She carried a dirty plastic bag in her shaking hands. But this was exactly what she wanted. Eleanor was 70 years old, and she was one of the richest women in America. She owned $2.8 billion. She had built hotels, restaurants, and shopping centers all across the country. But her most special creation was standing right in front of her, Unity Trust Bank. She had started this bank 42 years ago with one simple dream. She wanted every person, rich or poor, to feel welcome and respected when they walked through those doors. Today, she was going to find out if her dream was still alive. Eleanor took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy glass door. Cold air from the air conditioning hit her face immediately. The bank was beautiful inside. Shiny marble floors reflected the bright lights above. Tall columns reached up to the ceiling. Everything was clean and expensive looking. A few customers stood in line at the counters. Some were in business suits. Others wore casual clothes. They all looked comfortable and confident. Eleanor shuffled forward slowly, hunching her back the way she had practiced. She wanted to look exactly like someone who had nowhere to live and no money in her pockets. At the main desk sat a young woman with bright blonde hair. Her name tag said Sarah Mitchell, branch manager. She was about 30 years old and wore a fancy blue suit. Her fingers moved quickly across her keyboard. She did not look up when Eleanor approached. "Excuse me," Eleanor said quietly, her voice shaking on purpose. "I need help, please." Sarah kept typing. She did not even glance at Eleanor. Eleanor cleared her throat and spoke a little louder. "Miss, I would like to make a withdrawal from my account." This time, Sarah looked up. Her eyes traveled slowly from Eleanor's messy hair down to her torn shoes. Her face twisted with disgust, like she had just smelled something terrible. A young man at the next counter noticed what was happening. His name tag read Daniel Cooper. He had slicked back brown hair and wore too much cologne. He nudged a woman sitting beside him, whose tag said Linda Park. "Check this out," Daniel said with a mean smile. Sarah stood up from her chair and crossed her arms. "Ma'am, I think you are in the wrong place. This is a bank, not a shelter." "I know it is a bank," Eleanor replied, keeping her voice soft and humble. "I have had an account here for many years. I just need to withdraw some money." Daniel burst out laughing. He laughed so hard that other customers turned to look. "An account? Here? Lady, do you even know where you are right now?" Linda giggled behind her hand. "Sarah, should we call security? I mean, look at her. She probably has not bathed in weeks. The smell is making me sick." Eleanor felt her heart beating fast in her chest. But it was not from fear. It was from anger. A cold, quiet anger that burned like ice. She had experienced this kind of treatment many times when she was young and poor. She remembered store owners following her around, thinking she would steal. She remembered bank tellers refusing to help her mother. She remembered the whispers and the looks that said you do not belong here. That was exactly why she had built this bank, to make sure no one would ever feel that way again. Sarah picked up the phone on her desk. "Yes, this is Sarah at the front desk. Can you send security to the main hall? We have a situation." Eleanor stood very still. Her eyes moved slowly around the room, taking in every detail. She noticed the security cameras on the walls, their red lights blinking steadily. She noticed the other customers looking away, pretending they did not see what was happening. She noticed a big sign above the entrance that read, "Every person matters," the sign she had personally chosen when the bank opened. A large security guard walked over. His name tag said Kevin Barnes. He looked uncomfortable, like he did not really want to be there. "Ma'am, you need to leave," Kevin said quietly. "This is not the place for you." "But I am a customer," Eleanor said, her voice carrying a strength that made Sarah finally look at her properly. "I opened an account at this bank in 1983. That is 42 years ago." Daniel slapped his desk, laughing even harder. 42 years? Oh man, this is good. Did you hide your millions under your mattress all this time? Sarah shook her head, smiling cruelly. "Listen, Grandma, I do not know what kind of game you are playing, but we serve real customers here. People with jobs. People with money, not people who beg on street corners." Linda added, "You should try social services down the street. They help people like you. This bank is for working people." Eleanor felt something breaking inside her chest. Not her spirit. That was too strong to break. But her hope. Her hope that the bank she built still cared about her original mission. She reached into the inside pocket of her torn coat. Her fingers touched her phone. It was the newest model, worth over $1,000. Inside that phone were messages from CEOs, emails about million-dollar deals, and direct numbers to some of the most powerful people in the country. "Very well," Eleanor said calmly. "I will handle this differently." She turned and walked slowly toward the exit. Behind her, she heard Sarah call out loudly, "And do not come back. Next time, we really will call the police." Daniel's voice rang out. "Yeah, go find a soup kitchen or something." The other employees laughed. Some customers looked embarrassed, but nobody said anything to stop it. Eleanor pushed through the glass door and stepped back into the hot summer sunlight. The sounds of the city surrounded her. Cars honking, people talking, the rumble of the subway beneath her feet. She walked across the street and stood in the shade of a tree. From there, she could see through the bank's large windows. Sarah, Daniel, and Linda were celebrating. They were laughing and giving each other high fives. Sarah pretended to walk with a hunchback, clearly making fun of Eleanor. Daniel pulled out his phone and started typing, probably posting about what just happened on social media. Eleanor watched them for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed a number that only 4 people in the entire world knew. The phone rang once, twice, then a deep voice answered. "Robert speaking." "Robert," Eleanor said quietly, her voice as cold as winter ice. "It is me. I need you to come to the Madison Avenue branch immediately. Bring the emergency board papers. And Robert, bring the termination documents too." There was a pause on the other end. Then Robert said, "I will be there in 15 minutes, Miss Hayes." Eleanor hung up. She looked back at the bank, watching the 3 employees who had no idea their whole world was about to change. Inside the bank, Sarah pulled out her own phone and opened the employee group chat. She typed quickly, "You guys missed the best moment today. Some homeless woman tried to withdraw money here. We kicked her out so fast. Daniel and Linda are still laughing." Within seconds, replies started coming in, laughing emojis, comments like "good job," and "we cannot let those people think they can come anywhere." One person even wrote, "Did you take a video? That would be hilarious." Daniel posted on his social media, "Another day protecting our bank from people who do not belong. Working hard to keep our standards high." The post got likes immediately from friends and coworkers. None of them noticed the elderly woman across the street, the woman whose face was set like stone, the woman who had built everything they were standing in, the woman who was about to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. Eleanor's phone buzzed. A text from Robert. "On my way. Do you want me to contact the board members?" Eleanor typed back, "Yes. Emergency meeting. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp." She slipped her phone back into her pocket and waited. The summer sun beat down on her head, but she did not move. She just watched and waited, as still and patient as a hunter. A black car pulled up to the curb 15 minutes later. Robert Thompson stepped out, carrying a leather briefcase. He was 55 years old, with gray hair at his temples and kind eyes behind silver glasses. He had worked with Eleanor for 20 years and knew her better than almost anyone. He crossed the street and stood beside her under the tree. Without saying a word, he followed her gaze to the bank windows. Inside, the celebration was still going on. "Miss Hayes," Robert said softly. "What happened?" Eleanor did not look at him. She just kept watching. "Watch for yourself, Robert. Watch what our employees do when they think nobody important is looking." Through the window, they could see Sarah talking on the phone. She was gesturing wildly with one hand, clearly telling someone the story. Her face was bright with excitement. Every few seconds, she would laugh so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. Daniel had gathered a small crowd of employees around his desk. He was acting out the whole scene, pretending to be Eleanor with exaggerated movements. He hunched over, made his voice shaky and old, and pretended to beg for money. The other employees laughed and clapped. Linda was taking pictures of the social media posts to share in other group chats. She typed quickly, adding her own comments about how funny the whole situation had been. Robert's face grew darker with each passing second. "Miss Hayes, this is unacceptable." Eleanor finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were sad but determined. "Do you remember why I started this bank, Robert?" He nodded slowly. "You wanted to create a place where everyone was treated with dignity. Rich or poor, black or white, young or old. I grew up poor, Robert. So poor that my mother had to choose between buying food or paying rent." Eleanor's voice was quiet but strong. "I was 8 years old the first time a bank manager threw my mother out because her clothes were not nice enough. She just wanted to open a savings account with the $12 she had saved. $12, Robert. That was all she had in the world, and they treated her like garbage." Robert listened, his jaw tight. "When I was 16, I went to a bank to deposit my first paycheck from my cleaning job. The teller counted my money 3 times because he thought I must have stolen it. How could a black girl in old clothes have earned $42 honestly? That is what his eyes said, even if his mouth stayed quiet." Eleanor looked back at the bank. "That is why I built Unity Trust. I wanted every single person who walked through those doors to feel valued. I did not care if they had $1 or $1 million. I wanted them to be treated like human beings." Inside the bank, Sarah had just hung up the phone. She was talking to Daniel and Linda now, and all 3 of them were laughing again. Through the glass, Eleanor and Robert could see Sarah pick up her coffee cup and raise it like she was making a toast. Robert opened his briefcase and pulled out several folders. "I brought everything you asked for. The emergency board papers, the termination documents, and I took the liberty of pulling the employee records for those 3. Eleanor took the folders and opened the first one. Sarah Mitchell, hired 3 years ago. Several customer complaints about rude behavior, but they were all dismissed by the previous regional manager. 2 written warnings for treating elderly customers poorly. 1 complaint from a Hispanic customer about discrimination." She opened the second folder. "Daniel Cooper, hired 18 months ago. Multiple complaints about mocking customers with accents. 1 serious complaint from a disabled customer who said Daniel laughed at him. No disciplinary action taken." The third folder. "Linda Park, hired 2 years ago. 3 complaints about refusing service to customers who did not speak perfect English. 2 complaints about making racist comments. Again, no disciplinary action taken." Eleanor closed the folders slowly. "How did we let this happen, Robert? How did my bank become the exact thing I built it to fight against?" Robert sighed heavily. "The regional manager, Mr. Davidson, has been ignoring complaints for years. He cares more about profits than people. As long as the branches meet their sales targets, he does not care how the employees treat customers." Called Davidson, Eleanor said, "Tell him I want to see him in my office tomorrow morning at 8, before the board meeting." Robert nodded and pulled out his phone. As he dialed, Eleanor watched a new customer enter the bank. It was an older Asian man with a thick accent. He walked up to Linda's counter and asked a question. Even from across the street, Eleanor could see Linda's annoyed expression. She pointed rudely toward the ATM machines, clearly not wanting to help him. The man looked confused and tried to explain something, but Linda just waved him away and turned back to her computer. The man stood there for a moment, looking lost and embarrassed, then slowly walked toward the ATMs. Eleanor felt her hands curl into fists. "Robert, I also want the customer service records for this branch. Every complaint filed in the last 3 years. Every negative review. Every single piece of feedback. Already done. Miss Hayes." Robert handed her another thick folder. I had a feeling you would want to see these. There are 87 formal complaints about this branch alone. 87, Miss Hayes. That is more than any other branch in our entire network." Eleanor opened the folder and started reading. An elderly veteran who was told to leave because he looked messy. A single mother who was denied help because she did not have an appointment. A young black man who was followed around the bank by security for no reason. A homeless person who was trying to cash a check from a job but was thrown out before he could even speak. Page after page of pain. Page after page of people who came to her bank looking for help and left feeling humiliated. Eleanor felt tears burning in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She had not cried in public since she was a child, and she was not going to start now. Inside the bank, Sarah's phone rang. She answered it, and her face suddenly became serious. She stood up straighter, and her smile disappeared. After a moment, she hung up and called Daniel and Linda over to her desk. The three of them talked in low voices, looking worried now instead of happy. "What is happening?" Eleanor asked. Robert smiled slightly. That was Davidson calling her. "I just told him that the owner of the bank made a surprise visit to this branch today and was extremely unhappy with what she saw. I did not tell him you were the homeless woman. I just said you were watching from across the street and witnessed everything." "Good," Eleanor said. "Let them worry. Let them spend the night wondering if they still have jobs tomorrow." Sarah, Daniel, and Linda were no longer laughing. They huddled together, whispering urgently. Sarah kept running her hands through her blonde hair, a nervous habit. Daniel had gone pale. Linda was biting her nails. "Robert," Eleanor said quietly, "do you know what the hardest part of building this bank was?" Robert shook his head. It was not finding investors. It was not dealing with regulations. It was not even dealing with people who did not want a black woman to succeed. Eleanor paused. The hardest part was holding on to hope. Hope that people could be better. Hope that kindness could win over cruelty. Hope that my dream of a bank that served everyone equally could actually come true. She looked at Robert with tired eyes. Today, those three people did not just insult me. They destroyed my hope. They took everything I built, and they spat on it. Robert put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then tomorrow, Miss Hayes, we rebuild. We remind them what this bank stands for. And we make sure this never happens again." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, everything changes. But tonight, I want you to do something for me. Anything, Miss Hayes. I want you to review the hiring practices at every single branch. I want to know how these people got hired in the first place. I want to know who trained them. I want to know who ignored the complaints. And I want to know how many other employees are treating customers the same way." Robert wrote quickly in his notebook, "Consider it done." Eleanor took one last look at the bank. Through the window, she could see Sarah making a phone call, probably her family or friends, telling them she might be in trouble. Daniel was sitting at his desk with his head in his hands. Linda was pacing back and forth. They should be worried, Eleanor thought, because tomorrow morning, they are going to learn that actions have consequences. Tomorrow morning, they are going to learn that the homeless woman they mocked was actually the most powerful person they would ever meet. Tomorrow morning, everything they thought they knew about their world was going to fall apart. Eleanor turned away from the bank and walked toward Robert's car. As she opened the door, she said quietly, "Take me home. Robert, I need to prepare for tomorrow. I need to decide exactly how we are going to fix this broken system." Robert started the car and pulled into traffic. As they drove away, Eleanor looked back one more time at the tall glass building with her name hidden in its foundation. "Unity Trust Bank," she whispered. "Tomorrow, you are going to remember what those words really mean." The next morning arrived with gray clouds covering the sky. Eleanor woke up at 5 o'clock, just like she did every morning. She made herself tea and sat by her window, looking out at the city as it slowly came to life. But this morning felt different. This morning, she was going to do something she had never done before. She was going to show people who she really was. At 7:30, Eleanor arrived at the main headquarters of Unity Trust Bank. It was a tall building in the heart of the financial district. She no longer wore her homeless disguise. Instead, she wore a sharp gray suit Her hair was perfectly styled, and her jewelry sparkled under the lobby lights. The security guard recognized her immediately and nodded with deep respect. "Good morning, Miss Hayes," they said, opening the doors wide. Eleanor took the private elevator to the 20th floor, where her office was located. Robert was already there, waiting with fresh coffee and a stack of documents. "Everything is ready," he said. "Mr. Davidson arrived 10 minutes ago. He is in the conference room, and he looks very nervous." "Good," Eleanor said, sitting down at her desk. "Let him be nervous. And the 3 employees from yesterday? They are on their way. I told them there was a mandatory meeting with upper management. They do not know you will be there." Eleanor nodded. "And the board members?" "All 12 of them confirmed. They will arrive at 9 o'clock sharp." Eleanor sipped her coffee and looked at the documents Robert had prepared. Videos from the security cameras showing everything that happened yesterday. The employee group chat messages. The social media posts. Customer complaints going back 3 years. Everything was there, organized and ready. At exactly 8 o'clock, Eleanor walked into the conference room. Mr. Davidson stood up so fast he almost knocked over his chair. He was a heavy man with thinning hair and sweat already forming on his forehead. "Miss Hayes," he stammered, "I had no idea you were going to be here personally. If I had known about your visit to the branch yesterday, I would have prepared a full report." Eleanor sat down at the head of the table and gestured for him to sit. "No need for reports, Mr. Davidson. I saw everything I needed to see with my own eyes." Davidson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Miss Hayes, I understand there was an incident yesterday. I have already spoken to Sarah, and she assures me it was just a misunderstanding. The woman who came in was acting strangely, and they were simply following security protocols." "Security protocols," Eleanor repeated, her voice cold as ice. "Is it your security protocol to mock elderly people, to laugh at them, to post about it on social media like it is entertainment?" Davidson's face went pale. I did not know about the social media posts." Eleanor slid a folder across the table. "This folder contains 87 formal complaints about the Madison Avenue branch. 87 people who were treated poorly by your employees. You dismissed every single one of them. Why?" Davidson opened the folder with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the pages. "Well, Miss Hayes, sometimes customers exaggerate. We cannot take disciplinary action every time someone feels offended. We would never have any employees left." Eleanor leaned forward. "Let me tell you something about those 87 complaints, Mr. Davidson. Each one represents a person who trusted my bank, a person who believed that Unity Trust was different, a person who thought they would be treated with respect, and each one of them left feeling humiliated and worthless. But Miss Hayes, the branch has excellent sales numbers. They meet all their targets. I do not care about sales numbers if we are destroying people's dignity to get them," Eleanor said, her voice rising. "I built this bank on a promise that everyone would be valued. You broke that promise. Those 3 employees broke that promise. And I am here to make sure it never happens again." Davidson opened his mouth to respond, but Eleanor held up her hand. "You are fired, Mr. Davidson. Effective immediately. Your position as regional manager is terminated. You have 1 hour to clear out your office." Davidson's face turned red, then white. "But Miss Hayes, I have worked here for 15 years. You cannot just fire me without warning." "Watch me," Eleanor said. "Robert will escort you out. Leave your keys and your access cards on the desk." Robert opened the door and gestured for Davidson to leave. The man stumbled out, looking shocked and defeated. Eleanor sat alone in the conference room for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Then she pressed a button on the phone. "Send them in," she said. A minute later, Sarah, Daniel, and Linda walked into the room. They were all dressed professionally, trying to look their best, but their eyes were filled with fear. They had heard that Davidson was fired, and now they knew they were in serious trouble. They sat down across from Eleanor, glancing at each other nervously. "Good morning," Eleanor said calmly. "I am sure you are wondering why you are here." Sarah cleared her throat. We heard there was a complaint about yesterday, but I want to assure you, we were just following protocol. That woman was acting suspicious. Suspicious, Eleanor repeated. Tell me, what was suspicious about her? Well, Daniel spoke up. She looked homeless. She smelled bad. She was clearly not a real customer. Not a real customer, Eleanor said. Interesting. Tell me, what does a real customer look like? The three employees looked at each other, suddenly realizing they were walking into a trap. Linda tried to answer. A real customer is someone who has money, someone who belongs in a bank. Eleanor stood up and walked to the window. Let me tell you a story, she said. 42 years ago, a young black woman walked into a bank to apply for a business loan. She had a solid business plan. She had saved every penny she earned from 3 jobs. But the bank manager took one look at her and laughed in her face. He told her that people like her did not belong in the world of business. He told her to go home and stop wasting his time. The 3 employees sat in silence, not knowing where the story was going. Eleanor turned to face them. That young woman was me. And do you know what I did? I did not give up. I found investors who believed in me. I worked day and night for years. And I built this bank so that no one would ever be treated the way I was treated. Sarah's face went completely white. Oh my God, she whispered. Yesterday, Eleanor continued, I came to your branch disguised as a homeless woman. I wanted to see for myself how my employees treated the most vulnerable people in our community. And what I saw broke my heart. Daniel looked like he might throw up. Miss Hayes, we did not know. We are so sorry. If we had known it was you, if you had known it was me, you would have treated me with respect. Eleanor interrupted. But the homeless woman you thought I was? She deserved cruelty and mockery? Is that what you are saying? No one answered. They all stared at the floor. Every person who walks into this bank deserves respect, Eleanor said, her voice shaking with emotion. Every single person, rich or poor, clean or dirty, young or old. That is not just a nice idea. That is the foundation of everything this bank stands for. She placed 3 envelopes on the table. These are your termination letters. You are fired, all 3 of you, effective immediately. Sarah started crying. Please, Miss Hayes, I have student loans. I need this job. And the people you humiliated needed dignity. Eleanor replied, but you took that away from them, just like you tried to take it away from me. Daniel stood up, anger flashing across his face. This is not fair. We were just doing our jobs. Every bank kicks out homeless people. Then every bank is wrong, Eleanor said firmly. And my bank will be different. Linda whispered, what about our references? How will we get other jobs? Eleanor looked at each of them. I will not lie in your references. I will tell future employers exactly what happened. What you do with your lives after this is up to you. You can learn from this experience and become better people. Or you can continue to treat others with cruelty. That choice is yours. Security arrived to escort them out. As they left, Sarah turned back one more time. I really am sorry, Miss Hayes. I wish I could take it back. Sorry is a start, Eleanor said. But sorry does not heal the people you hurt. Only action does. Only change does. After they left, Eleanor sat down heavily in her chair. Robert came in with more coffee. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, he said gently. Are you ready? Eleanor nodded. She gathered her documents and walked down the hall to the main boardroom. 12 board members were already seated around the massive table. They all stood when she entered. For the next hour, Eleanor presented everything she had discovered. The complaints, the security videos, the social media posts, the systematic failure to address discrimination. This is unacceptable, she said. We have failed our mission. We have become exactly what I fought against when I started this bank. One board member, an older gentleman named Mr. Chun, spoke up. Miss Hayes, what do you propose we do? Eleanor had been thinking about this all night. First, we implement mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for every employee. Not just a quick video they can ignore. Real, meaningful training that teaches empathy and respect. She continued. Second, we create an independent committee to review all customer complaints. No more regional managers sweeping problems under the rug. Third, we hire mystery shoppers from different backgrounds. Elderly people, homeless people, people with disabilities, people with accents. They will visit our branches randomly and report how they are treated. Fourth, we change our hiring practices. From now on, I want to see diversity not just in race and gender, but in life experience. I want employees who understand struggle, who know what it feels like to be judged unfairly. The board members nodded, taking notes. And fifth, Eleanor said, her voice strong and clear, we launched community outreach program, free financial literacy classes, banking services for homeless individuals, microloans for people starting small businesses. We're going back to our roots. We're going to serve everyone, especially those who need us most. A younger board member named Ms. Rodriguez raised her hand. Miss Hayes, this will be expensive. It might hurt our profits. Eleanor looked at her steadily. I would rather have lower profits and keep my soul than have high profits and lose my humanity. Money means nothing if we use it to crush other people. The board voted unanimously to approve all of Eleanor's proposals. As the meeting ended, Eleanor stood at the window looking down at the city. Robert came to stand beside her. You did the right thing, he said. I hope so, Eleanor replied. But this is just a beginning. Changing policies is easy. Changing hearts is much harder. Over the next few months, Unity Trust Bank transformed. Every employee went through the new training programs. The Mystery Shopper program revealed several more branches with problems, and those were addressed immediately. The community outreach program became wildly popular, helping hundreds of people open their first bank accounts. Eleanor personally visited every branch, sometimes in disguise, sometimes as herself. She made sure her message was clear. Every person matters. 6 months later, Eleanor received a letter. It was from Sarah, the manager she had fired. The letter read, Dear Miss Hayes, I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that losing my job was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to look at myself honestly. I started volunteering at a homeless shelter. I listened to people's stories. I learned that everyone has dignity, no matter what their circumstances are. I am going back to school to become a social worker. I want to spend the rest of my life helping people instead of hurting them. Thank you for teaching me this lesson. Even though I learned it the hard way, Eleanor folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. Maybe, she thought, there's hope after all. That evening, Eleanor returned to the Madison Avenue branch one final time. She walked through the doors, and the new manager, a kind woman named Patricia, greeted her with a warm smile. Welcome to Unity Trust Bank. Miss Hayes, how can we help you today? Eleanor looked around the lobby. The sign still read, Every person matters. But now, finally, those words meant something again. I am just here to observe, Eleanor said with a smile. She sat in the waiting area and watched. She watched as Patricia helped an elderly man with patience and kindness. She watched as another employee spent 20 minutes explaining banking terms to a young immigrant who barely spoke English. She watched as a security guard helped a woman in a wheelchair reach the ATM. Eleanor thought, this is what I built the bank for. Not for profit, not for prestige, but for moments like these. Moments when people are treated like human beings. Moments when dignity wins over cruelty. Moments when kindness changes the world, one interaction at a time. As Eleanor left the bank that evening, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you fought for what was right, even when it was hard, even when it cost something, even when the whole world was watching. And somewhere in the city, 3 former employees were learning that same lesson, that how we treat others, especially those who cannot fight back, defines who we really are. That is a story of how one woman's test revealed the truth, and how that truth, painful as it was, led to real change. Because sometimes, the most important lessons come disguised as homeless women in torn coats. And sometimes, the biggest mistakes teach us the most valuable truths. The question is, will we listen? Will we learn? Will we choose kindness over cruelty? That choice is always ours to make. The end. Thank you for reading this story from Viral Tales. If it touched your heart or made you think differently about how we treat others, please share, and subscribe. And remember to tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We love hearing from our community around the world. Until next time, choose kindness,